So the first of my three things is this. Adults learn best about their faith in conversation with other adults about things that matter. Now, I think this would be true about adults learning a number of different topics, but adult faith is my niche, and I want to talk about that. I teach and do research and write as a practical theologian and religious educator with a focus on adult faith. Now, to understand what I mean when I say adults learn best about their faith in conversation with other adults about things that matter, I think I need to talk a bit about what I mean by faith, by conversation, and by things that matter. So let me take a moment to touch on each of those. When I speak about faith, I'm drawing on the work of someone like James Fowler, who understands faith to be different from belief or one's religious tradition. Faith, as I'm using it, as Fowler uses it, is about making meaning, about what defines one's life. It's about, and this would be Fowler's idea, it's about being in relationship with an ultimate point of reference beyond myself that provides me with a sense of identity and points to my value and convictions. So if this is how I'm using the word faith, then we can draw out some implications for the focus of the conversation about things that matter, that contribute to adult faith. What might be the topic of these conversations? Let me name some topics that aren't about things that matter. Discussing the contributing factors to the decisions made at Vatican Council I in the 1800s. That would not be one. Or defining the Church's teaching on the indefectibility of the Church. Both of those are important things and important things to know, but they're not the things that matter. When I talk about things that matter, I'm referring to those experiences, questions, hopes, dreams, worries that shape our lives. What does my faith mean for how I raise my children, for how I spend my time and money, for how I engage with and respond to the news of the day, for what touches my heart or my sense of justice, or both? Those are the conversations about things that matter. These conversations, which need to be sustained, critical, and engaging, are examples of the genuine conversation that Hans Georg Gadamer points to when he writes on page 383 of Truth and Method, second edition, and writes, and I quote, "Thus, a genuine conversation is never the one that we wanted to conduct. Rather, it is generally more correct to say that we fall into conversation, or even that we become involved in it. No one knows in advance what will come out of a genuine conversation." Those are the conversations that I believe people want and need to grow in their faith. Now, how did this topic, or how did this idea become one of my top three things? One of the constants in my teaching career has been my involvement in religious education beyond the BC classroom, particularly adult faith formation on the parish, diocesan, and national level. Now, before coming to BC, I taught at St. John's University in Collegeville, Minnesota for 10 years. And I had the wonderful opportunity to work with a team of parishioners from St. Paul's Parish in St. Cloud, Minnesota, to design and implement a process of faith formation that has as its beginning spot the adult community. We asked first, what does the adult community need to be thinking about, learning about, and talking about? Once we determined that, we designed a program for the adults, and only then raised the question, what do the children need to experience? What formation do they need so that they can do those conversations at their own level? This is the inverse of the way that most models of religious education take place within the Roman Catholic Church today. Generally, our parishes begin with children's curriculum and then invite parents to join in with their children in activities that all can be involved with. But it was in that context of an adult-based program that my conviction on the importance of conversation among adults about things that matter took shape. We introduced into the process small group conversations that were designed to last at least as long as the presentation was. Although it was not an easy sell at first, eventually the parishioners came to recognize that the most formative part of the evening's gathering were the conversations. The 20-minute presentation that began each gathering was simply the framework around which to do a conversation. And in many ways, we taught them they learned much more than the topic that we were discussing. Let me tell you a quick story. The year I left Minnesota to come to BC, the topic of the year was on scripture. And Mimi Bitson, who conducted the adult component of the process, had arranged for a big-name speaker from the Twin Cities to come up to give the all-important first lecture of the season. It was that lecture that really set out the theme for the year. When I called her the next day from Boston to ask her how it had gone, she rather unenthusiastically said, "Okay." "Okay," I said. "I thought this guy was supposed to be great." "Well, perhaps he is. He is," she said, "but not for us." She went on to explain that he came in with a canned talk, not the one they had discussed, and not the one that they had planned and built conversation around. Second, he went over the 20 minutes. People were getting antsy to get to their discussion groups. And finally, during the question and response time at the end of the evening, his responses were kind of offhanded and perhaps even glib. Overall, Mimi said, he made the mistake of thinking that he came with all the wisdom, not recognizing and allowing the wisdom of our parishioners to show forth. If we taught them nothing else, she said, they have come to recognize that their experience and sense of faith are worth talking about and listening to. Now, the experience at St. Paul's was formative for my writing, research, and teaching, and the source of a good number of friends along the way. Now, if this were an in-person event, I would invite you to turn to the persons near you or the stranger in the row behind you and talk about a conversation that you had that made a difference in how you understood your life, in how you see yourself, how you make meaning of the world around you. And while some of you would sigh and roll your eyes at the idea of doing group work, I bet that for many of you, that would be an important and even transformative aspect of the evening's event. Adults in conversation. That's how they learn about their faith.